Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, rainy neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in our mission by letting all of your family and friends know about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have a great show lined up for you today. One of our favorite guests, Rajani LaRocca, returns to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her new picture book, Some of Us, A Story of Citizenship in the United States. And later in the show, we head over to South Africa to speak to Etienne Labuschagne about his Bedtime for Clever Kids book. Hey, my friends, would you like to bring a little warmth and magic into your home? Let me introduce you to Welsh Mountain Candles, hand-poured on a working Amish farm in Lancaster County. These all-natural, toxin-free candles are made from palm wax with a stunning crystallized glow, rich coconut apricot wax for a creamy finish, and essential oils for a pure, refreshing scent. Whether you're winding down, setting the mood, or just love a great candle, Welsh Mountain Candles are crafted with care and made to be shared. Visit welshmountaincandles.com. Use the promo code JED10 for 10% off your order today. Light up your home with Welsh Mountain Candles, where every candle tells a story. Join us right now from right outside of Boston. One of our favorite guests is returning to Reading with Your Kids to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called Some of Us, A Story of Citizenship in the United States. Please welcome to the show, Rajani LaRocca. Hey, Rajani, how are you?
I'm great, Jed. How are you?
Wonderful. You really are one of my favorite guests. We've had some amazing conversations. In fact, we had a great conversation about your book about the heart, which was really fun. And I asked what I thought was a dumb question, but then you were very kind to say, no, it wasn't dumb at all. And you gave a great answer. And then I find out that book was banned somewhere. And I haven't had a chance to ask you, what in the world could anybody find issue with that book? I don't get it, and I haven't had a chance to ask you about it. So, what up?
So it was, it's in the city of Huntington Beach, California, where they've had some issues, and there's the town council, I think, put a bunch of books in the restricted section of the library. So it's like the kids section apparently is on the first floor and the restricted section's up on the fourth floor. There's like all kinds of warnings, like don't come in here, that kind of thing. But I only found out about this because, I learned that the ACLU and along with several citizens of the town were suing, because California has a freedom to read law on the books, and they were suing the town council saying, hey, like, you're not allowed to do this. There's nothing wrong with these books. So in addition to Your One and Only Heart, which is literally a picture book written in poetry about the human heart, they had like Everyone Poops, which is like one of my kids' favorite story picture books from when they were a kid. It was just hilarious. And another book on the human body. And I think there were a lot of science books that were included. So I don't know exactly what they thought was going on, but someone who's in California said some of the times they were targeting books that had anything depicting anything that would be covered by a swimsuit. So I think there's a picture of a little kid with an EKG attached. And I don't know, if a boy is wearing a swimsuit, usually his chest is exposed. I don't understand what that has to do with anything. But in any case, my book it's been confirmed that it has been removed from the restricted section and it is in the children's section where it belongs. But
thank goodness. Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
My goodness.
It's out from behind that curtain that used to be in the back of the video stores. And I just made Rajani almost spit up her water.
Yeah, nothing like that. Nothing like that. It's just really crazy. But it just goes to show that, like, a lot of the people that are trying to ban books are not reading them, right? I mean, obviously, there's nothing wrong with showing a kid getting EKG. I don't understand what the problem is. And, there's nothing wrong with teaching kids about science and getting them excited and interested in science. So.
Exactly.
Oh well.
Yeah. And I've been to Huntington Beach. The people seemed fairly reasonable, but obviously I didn't meet everyone. So.
I don't know. And I think that there were plenty of citizens who were really upset by this. So I think that's why things have turned around, pretty quickly, but it's still concerning and upsetting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's see if we can get people upset about, talking about U.S. citizenship. Let's start it here in Massachusetts. So tell us about Some of Us.
So Some of Us is a celebration of all the people who come from other countries to the U.S. And bring all of their talent and hard work and culture and contribute to our country and our democracy. And it started because I was at a writers conference with a bunch of writers, but also a bunch of editors. And it was like the last meal of the last day. And a bunch of us were just sitting around a table eating lunch. And three of us at the table, I don't know how it came up, but three of us were naturalized citizens of the U.S. And so we were talking, and as we were talking, we shared our naturalization stories. And I said, there isn't a picture book about this topic, and I think it's really interesting. And I think maybe, I should write that picture book. And one of the editors said, yes, please write the picture book, and I would love to publish it. And so I got all inspired, and I wrote about it. I wrote the draft pretty quickly and then revised it pretty quickly and sent it off. And yeah, so that's the editor who's publishing this book, Jessica Anderson at Christie Ottaviano Books, Little Brown, and she's also a naturalized citizen. So I am a naturalized citizen, she is a naturalized citizen, and the illustrator Hoi Won Lee, who is originally from Cambodia, is also a naturalized citizen. So everyone working on this book is a naturalized citizen, which is so cool.
That is very cool. And the process of naturalization, I think, what a perfect topic to speak not only to kids. I think there are a lot of adults that could learn a lot from this book because we, especially now with all the arguing about immigration and whatnot, I think it's time we should step back and learn so that when we're having conversations with people, we know what we're talking about. We're not just repeating things that someone that entertains us is shouting on TV.
Definitely. And, I think people should remember that unless you are Native American, every single one of us who lives in this country, our ancestors came from someplace else. Mm-hmm. So this is not a new thing, right? Immigration has been part of the history of the United States since the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And, in order to become a naturalized citizen, like you have to live here as a green card holder for a certain number of years. And then you have to study for an exam, and then you have to take an exam on how the U.S. government works. It's basically like a high school level exam, I would say. And then you swear an oath to our country, and you swear an oath to the Constitution of our country, right? Not to a specific person, not to Congress, not to the president, but to the Constitution and the ideals for which this country stands. And I have to tell you, how if you have to work for something, it becomes very precious to you. Mm-hmm. I think that people who have to study and take a test and swear an oath specifically to become a citizen, that becomes something very valuable to them. And it's interesting, the story, the book is nonfiction, and the book starts, some of us are born American, some of us choose. And I think that act of choosing is really, really important. Yeah. And I think that sometimes people want to think about immigration with a particular negative slant. But I think if you look around, you realize that immigrants are our neighbors, right? Our kids go to school together. Like we take care of you in hospitals. We create music that you love. We have restaurants that people want to go to. We pick the produce that, ends up on our tables. There's so many jobs that immigrants do. A lot of them are scientists. Some people, come to the United States to flee something horrible that is happening in their country of origin. And of course, that should be something that we should care about, because the United States is supposed to be the beacon of safety and freedom and liberty, right? That's what we've always been to the world. So of course we want to welcome in people who are fleeing something horrific in their own country. But lots of people come from other countries because they have a lot to give our country. We ask them to come. We invite them to come. So there's all kinds of ways to be an immigrant, and I think they're all important to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. My grandparents immigrated here, and so I'm second generation, and so they were very excited to come here. In fact, I didn't learn a lot about my Irish roots because my grandfather specifically said, I came here to be an American. And so he kind of left a lot of that back. So I don't know a lot of that stuff. And I do know how desperate lots of people are to be here. During my tour of El Salvador with Clowns Without Borders, we were in a spot where a woman came up to us and asked one of the artists to hold her daughter as so she could take a picture. And then she said, can you take her back with you? Mm. So we're very fortunate that to be American citizens, and I hope that people take that seriously.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine being in a place that felt so dangerous to you that you would give your baby to strangers to keep them safe?
I know.
That's the thing. It's how horrible must it be? How desperate must you be if, in order to ask that question?
Yeah. Tell me what's the reaction been to the piece? I know it's not out yet as we're recording this, but I know folks have read it and checked it out, and you've had beta readers and whatnot. It's getting some critical praise, I understand.
Yeah, it's gotten 3-starred trade reviews.
Congratulations.
So I'm thrilled. I think that people, it is a nonfiction book, but there's a lot of emotion in it, as you can tell, in the words, but also in the art. And I think that that's helpful. There's also an author's note in the back that talks about the history of immigration and naturalization in our country, which when I researched it, I was kind of horrified sometimes at how long it took for some people to be allowed to be citizens. It's kind of crazy. I think that the story of immigration and naturalization is the story of what the American dream is supposed to be, right? The American dream is supposed to be for all of us, no matter how humble our beginnings, to have a chance to live the lives that we want, right? And so that's what this book is about people coming from all over the place, sometimes really far away and sometimes quite nearby, to have a better life in our country. And along the way, they contribute so much to our country. And then they may, if they choose and if they are lucky, try to become American citizens and participate in our democracy fully. And then it's also an Indie Next pick, which I'm really grateful for. So independent booksellers have chosen it as one of the top 10 picture books of May and June. And that's really exciting too.
That is really, really great. one of the things, and we kind of touched on this, one of the things that is so frustrating for me is that people want to come here to America for a lot of different reasons. And I think one of the reasons that it really drives a lot of people coming here is the idea of freedom, the idea of being able to express your opinion, and the idea that you can disagree with powerful people, you can disagree with the government. I really wish we could get to the point where we could have conversations about things we disagree on instead of just having shouting matches. It's really disturbing to me as I approach 100 years old. It's like I want things. I want us to live up to that dream that Dr. King had, that we're here and we can be judged by the content of our character, by how we treat other people, and not because we're on this team or that team. Yeah.
And, the other thing is that as the United States has shown over and over again, there is more than enough opportunity for everyone. Like, if somebody wants to come here and do something wonderful, that doesn't take away from anybody else. The immigrants tend to come here and create opportunities and create jobs and put money into our economy, if you're going to only think about it from that point of view. But the stuff that you can't quantify is how much just kind of knowledge and hard work and talent and kind of cultural diversity, how much that brings to our country, how much joy that brings. You can't really put a number on that. So yeah, like, I think that it would be nice if we could step back and think about this instead of yelling at each other. It would be nice to have a dialogue with people.
Yeah, it really would. You amaze me on so many levels. Not only are you a very prolific writer, and I wouldn't be surprised if I had you back in the fall because you had 3 more picture books and middle grade novels coming out, whatever. But on top of that, you're a working physician. You're in one of the most prestigious hospitals in the world. Where do you find the energy for this? Are you in, taking a temperature and then writing down notes for a picture book?
Usually I separate the doctor and the writer, but I will say that, books were my first love, right? And it was because of a book that I wanted to become a doctor. And then medicine was my second love. And I pursued that for a long time before I came back to writing. And so, I'm really grateful that I get to do both. And I do think that the two careers complement each other. I think both of them involve a lot of observing people and listening to people and trying to figure out, listening to people's stories and trying to understand that in the context of, what they want for their life, And so, it's been great. And when I go see patients, I really am only thinking about my patients. Thank goodness. But it's been fun, and I'm not giving it up anytime soon. And it's great. And I feel like sometimes when publishing, like writing is great. Sometimes publishing can have its frustrations. Things take forever, blah, blah. So when publishing becomes frustrating, I'm like, at least I'm working and taking care of people. And, I did something good for someone today. And then when, a doctoring gets to be too much and stressful, I can just escape into a world that's only in my head. So it's great.
Awesome. That's one of the best episodes of Reading with Your Kids was when you came on and you were talking about writing and the process of writing. And the episode was called It Starts with an Emotion. And that was just such a wonderful deep dive into not only your writing process, but getting people to think about how they can tell better stories. I'm wondering, is there any, and I can see how this could be a very emotional topic for you, some of us, the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. Are there any emotions that you haven't written about yet that you're really excited to write about or that you'd like to write about?
Oh my goodness, that's an interesting question. there any that I haven't written about? I mean, probably that. The answer is of course yes, but like, what would that be? I don't know. I mean, I think that in the course of writing picture books and novels, I think I've covered lots of emotions, like really positive ones, but also really negative ones. And my characters get angry. My characters feel sad. My characters are jealous. All those kinds of things are, interesting emotions that I've, covered, but also they're joyful and they're in love and they're celebratory and, so I don't know. It's so interesting. So what happens when I write is that I usually have an idea and the emotion, is part of that idea. So it's not like I say, oh, I haven't like done this emotion yet. I'm going to go, figure out a story for that. It's like I come up with an idea and I'm like, oh, okay. So like the underlying emotion for this story is whatever, embarrassment or uncertainty or, whatever. And then, I end up, especially during revision, trying to draw that out more. But That's an interesting question. Ooh.
Have you written a book about embarrassment or that had that as a real focus?
Yeah. So Summer is for Cousins, which came out a couple of years ago, is about, a big family that gets together every year and all the cousins get together. But the main character is a little boy named Ravi, and he's the only boy except for his oldest cousin, Dhruv, and he loves him, but he's not sure that Dhruv like remembers him, like, and all the things that they used to do together. So Ravi is like, I'm the little guy and he's so big and he's gotten like so much taller and his voice is deeper and all this stuff. And he's not sure. And so he's kind of embarrassed, but he's also really uncertain about whether that connection is still there. And of course, I used to feel that way when I went to India to visit my cousins because it would be like 3 to 5 years in between visits. And I loved them and we had so much in common, but then I was like, ooh, like, do they remember me? Like, I'm like, I haven't seen them in a while. So, but like, with anybody you love, within like 24 hours, it is clear that like they remember all kinds of stuff, probably stuff that you don't remember, and that they still love you. So, that the story is kind of like, part of the story is kind of reconnecting and finding that bond again. And it's very sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, can you give us a preview about what book you'll be talking about next on Reading with Your Kids?
Yes, well, my next picture book is called Fall is for Beginnings. It is coming out on August 5th of 2025. And believe it or not, it's a follow-up to Summer is for Cousins. Uh-huh. And so it's a beginning of school story. So Ravi is all excited to go back to school. He's got a best friend named Joe. He can't wait to see him. And they get to school and they see each other and they're so happy. But then there's a new girl, named Ellie who shows up and she says to Ravi, I know we're going to be best friends. And he's like, oh, and he kind of has no idea how to deal with this. And like, Ellie is a lot. So he's got to navigate what in the world to do with this girl who is like basically inserted herself into everything. And, so it's about the beginning of school and the beginning of friendship.
Awesome. Now, if that was an episode of Law and Order, she'd be a stalker, turn into a stalker, of course.
That's not stalking. Thank goodness.
Hey, Rajani, remind everybody where they can go to find out more about Some of Us, a story of citizenship in the United States, and find out more about you.
The best place is my website, www.rajanilarocca.com, RajaniLarocca.com.
I've had a great time speaking to the author of the brand new picture book. It's called Some of Us, a story of citizenship in the United States. Our guest has been Rajani LaRocca. Rajani, thanks so much, and we'll see you in the fall.
Thank you so much, Jed. Always wonderful to talk to you.
My friends, if you have ever thought about owning a business that's fun, rewarding, and makes a valuable contribution to kids' education, well, Brooklyn Robot Foundry is calling your name. I recently met Jenny Young. She's the founder of Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And let me tell you, she is incredible. Her passion for getting kids excited about STEAM, that's STEM plus art, It's contagious. I'm telling you. This isn't your average kids program. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is all about hands-on, screen-free STEAM fun. These kids get to build a different robot each class and take it home with them afterwards. Kids love it. Parents are raving about it. And now you can own a franchise and bring this incredible experience to families in your community. Now, this isn't your typical franchise. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is a mobile, flexible business with a deep curriculum that's making a real impact in schools and communities around the country. Franchise owners get a proven curriculum, full training, and support from a passionate team. So what are you waiting for? Please visit bit.ly/RobotJed. That's bit.ly/RobotJed. And let them know you heard about it on Reading with Your Kids. Joining us from Pretoria in South Africa, our guest is here today to celebrate. His new children's book is called Bedtime for Clever Kids. Please welcome to the show, Etienne Labuschagne. My friend, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me, Jed. It's an honor.
Delighted to have you on. It is an honor to have you on. In addition, we just mentioned this up front. In addition to being a children's author, you are a justice, a high justice in the court system in South Africa.
That's correct. I'm a judge of the High Court.
Judge of the High Court. And is that similar to our Supreme Court here in the States?
Not as high as that. It would be the first round of single judges. Okay. Although I do sit in full court sessions with two other judges, as I will be tomorrow. But I'm not in one of the appellate divisions.
Well, I am delighted that I'm meeting you here on Zoom and not in front of you in a courtroom.
So am I.
So tell us about Bedtime for Clever Kids.
The stories have been built up over a period. I've been writing stories, recording stories for my children since they were 5, and that's more than 30 years ago. And what culminated in this book was really a sequence of events. When they were 5, both of them they have alignment problems with their legs, so they had bilateral osteotomies and were in plaster of Paris for 2 months. Had to learn to walk all over again. So I recorded stories for them, and they would listen to these, and some of those have recently been transcribed and have been illustrated, and I've handed them to my granddaughter. And the second unfortunate event was in 2017. I lost my wife, and it was a time of grieving, and the thought of grandchildren was really a lifeline for me. So I started writing stories to them, although there were none of them. I knew what this little girl who was born 2 years ago, what her name would be, because my late wife had chosen the name. And so I started writing stories to her in the hope that if I don't make it, at least she will hear my voice through stories. And this then, the third unfortunate event was COVID. By that time, I'd become quite adept at writing stories and illustrating them. And I just started writing them quite vociferously and just disseminating them to everybody with children. It was such a bizarre time when parents with small children were trapped in apartments with nowhere to go, couldn't open the door and go outside. It was really hellish to think of the stress levels for those parents. And I thought they need a break. And I think we all deserved a break. And these stories were an opportunity for them to just read something to their children at bedtime and have 10 minutes of peace, and perhaps an opportunity to talk about some of the topics that the stories introduce. Yeah. So this is a selection of some of the stories that have come through that process.
Boy, that is an incredible process, and I find it so heartwarming that you are writing stories for a granddaughter who hadn't quite arrived yet. And talk about hope. That's a beautiful, hopeful story.
That is so. That is, I think it's inherent in each one of us that we have something to contribute. And the time to contribute it is not always known for you, but there's no reason not to start contributing. Mm-hmm. And this was really casting a seed into the future and hoping that it would germinate. It was a conversation that I longed for, but I started having it, although it was one-sided at that time. I thought that my voice would be heard by my grandchild when she arrives, and I hoped that some of the thoughts that I was conveying in the stories would be of value to her. So it is, in a sense, I think, a grandfatherly thing to do, to want the best for your children and your grandchildren, and writing stories about things that I think are important was one way of trying to build into their future, even though I might not be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of, as you're talking about it, I'm thinking about, the possibility of me having grandkids, and I hope no one forces them to sit down and listen to all 2,200 episodes of Reading with Your Kids. That would be cruel and unusual punishment, I think. Tell us about one of maybe your favorite story in the collection.
There are a few. There's one which I quite enjoyed. It's about tolerance, and it's the story is called Mrs. Mallard. Now, a mallard is a duck. Mm-hmm. It's one of these beautiful ducks with this very green, shocking green wings, and it's got splashes of red as well. Now, this particular duck, she's very odd, and she decides that she and her husband are going to raise a family, but she's not going to lay her own eggs. So she pinches eggs from other nests. Now, the inciting thought is actually a very real one. This actually happened on a farm that I know of. People told me about it. But she's resourceful, so she starts pinching far and wide, and then hatches in the end, not what she expected. Mm-hmm. She had chickens and she had geese, and to their surprise, the last egg that hatched was a little crocodile. That's something that could happen where I live, because their eggs look just like a chicken's egg. The little crocodile, on being born, immediately snaps at one of the siblings. And Mrs. Mallard is immediately on the scene and says to him, "No, son, we don't eat family." And she immediately starts instructing the crocodile on good manners. And in the end, he starts going off and catching little tadpoles and bringing them to the other ducks and geese. But she was trying to get all of her family together. Of course, some of them can swim and some of them can't. So that was a bit of a disaster. But between her and her husband, they divided the kids between the swimmers and the non-swimmers. And he would look after the one and she after the others. But the neighbors were very critical of this very odd-looking family. And they said, "Mrs. Mallard, she's an odd duck because she can't keep her ducks in a row." And the others said, "But they're not ducks." They were very critical of this, and she hears of this, and she says, "Some of them are geese." And she thinks for a moment and talks to her husband and says, "This little one here, it's a small goose. What do you call a small goose?" And he thinks a bit and he says, "It's a gosling." And then I have my own moment of internal fun, and I flip up a picture of Ryan Gosling, and the duck says, "No, that doesn't sound right. I don't think it's right." So the parents will catch that one. I had fun. And in the process, this family, weird as it was, she keeps them together through love. And the neighbors in the end they say, "Leave them be. They're odd, but they're a family, and they seem to be getting along just fine." So it's a story about tolerance. And in a country like mine, which had a history of intolerance, it's not just a little topic. It's a driving force in our society to try and shape it in the way that our constitution requires, and I think to create the type of society in which we want to raise our children.
Amen. Whether you're talking South Africa or here in the States, I hope everybody is working to create a more tolerant, more accepting society and culture. I love that line that the Mother Goose says to the crocodile, we don't eat family. That's great. That could be the title of a book. I love that. Tell me, it's being a justice on the high court and being a children's author. Those are two ends of I guess, the professional spectrum. Does one inform the other at all? Does when you're in making rulings, does the children's author kind of click on sometimes and allow you to be, I don't know, more understanding in certain cases?
I think what the two fields have in common is the use of words and of language with different purposes. While I was practicing as counsel, I was at the Pretoria Bar for 36 years. The words were the currency of my trade, and I used them to build up arguments to advance the case of my client. So they were used in a very specific way with a very, very specific purpose. I think when you talk to children, language acquires a much softer significance. I think when you speak to your children, you're using language in a way that will hopefully convey information, will convey love and acceptance, will convey instruction, and will learn and will set boundaries in a way that the child feels safe. So it's the use of language that these two areas have in common. The writing is an artistic process, and because I illustrate the books as well, I draw on a creative bent that I've had since I was a child, and it took me a while, but I realized that the creative process that I use in making a painting is very similar to the use of words to create a picture when I'm either telling a story or when I'm writing a judgment or when I'm busy writing heads of argument for a court hearing. It's all very much the same underlying creative process, but with a different purpose. I found that the creative part of writing, etc., does inform advocacy and judicial thought. I think that the use of words, etc., and the depth of the meaning, to use simple language to convey profound thoughts, that is a burden that I think I shoulder with great joy, because the language in the end is a conveyor of meaning and of a message. And whether it started off in a creative process or not, the end result is something that you want to steer through the use of language. Yeah. I've not found that my analytical legal brain has inspired me as an artist or as a writer. Being analytical and has a way of stealing the spark and stealing the spontaneity. There's a way it's a bit of a killjoy sometimes to be too analytical.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Was it difficult to turn off that analytical mind and that lawyers, right? I always used to joke about my son because he reminded me of a lawyer when he was 3 and 4 years old. It's like, why use one word when I can use 50? Was it difficult to kind of switch that off and write in more simple, more concise ways?
I don't think that it's necessary for me to switch it off. I think my analytical brain does provide structure when I'm telling a story. I can introduce a thought and develop it, and then give it a twist and develop it further. And in the process, you're developing a structure, which is in a sense an analytical process. And I think that probably comes from an underlining a subliminal way of thinking. I wouldn't say that it is exclusive to the artistic side or exclusive to the legal side, but there's probably a degree of correlation between the two. But I must say I enjoyed every part of my practice, and writing stories is invigorating in a way that I never expected. Simply through the process that I do, I'm often sparked by a thought or by a word or by two things clashing. A gosling, is it Ryan Gosling or was it a little goose? Mm-hmm. Two different thoughts coming from the same word, setting your mind into a train of thought. And I would often start writing only knowing the first line. Mm-hmm. And I'd literally sit down and start writing, and my thoughts would take me on a journey, and in the process, characters would introduce themselves, and I would end up with, after 4 or 5 pages, with something which I think is fun to read. And then comes the joy of illustrating it and putting it together and sending it off.
Yeah, wonderful. Does that creative process where characters are kind of introducing themselves to you as opposed to when you're just writing with the facts and the law, was that a real surprise, a real pleasant surprise?
I think so, yes, because I've found that it depends very much on why I'm writing the story. Quite often, I have a specific child in mind with a very specific problem. And so that child would then feature as a character. But otherwise, if I've just started a conversation in my head, start talking, I would quite often be surprised by the fact that I think that these words should come out of the mouth of a parrot, or they should come out of the mouth of, there's one of those stories, out of a chessboard. Who thinks a chessboard can talk? Well, one who's trapped in 2 dimensions has a lot to say. He knows there's more about it, and there's a game being played on top. And so that idea of dimensions, it introduced a thought. And then that evolved in this one story specifically about chess into a game between a chess master and a young boy. Now, he uses the word dimension there to say that I want to lift your game. He wants to teach him strategy. And the word dimension, where the chessboard thought that it must mean something else than forward and backward and sideways, now hears that there's another word, another meaning to the word. And then in the game that is played, the boy reveals to the chess master that they have a family crisis, and the chess master realizes he has to build a life skill into this child. And he has to teach him how to think about there being a bigger picture where you must sometimes trust in a greater scheme of things. And in that instance, he uses a painting where the theme is that the king always has one more move. And he teaches the boy, in this crisis, remember, keep your eye on the king. He always has one more move. Wait for him. You will see the king make his move, and that move will be for you to make you cope with the difficulty that you're in. So that's almost like a spiritual level, which is in itself a topic for parents to pick up and to take further. So there you have an idea where I started with a chessboard, 2 dimensions, and it evolves into something deeper and more significant. And it's for parents to determine which level of that topic is appropriate for discussion with their children.
Yeah, wonderful. You mentioned earlier that your first story or one of the first stories that you wrote was for a grandchild that hadn't arrived yet. And I read in the show notes preparing for this that you are now grandfather to 6, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
And has being a grandfather lived up to expectations?
Oh, yes, it's a joy. It's an absolute joy. These children soak up information, and it's a pleasure to be able to share the world of the imagination with these children, because they just soak it up.
Yeah.
And they are open to anything. And yes, you can. It's really fun taking them along, reading to them, and seeing how their minds expand and how they connect different thoughts. This idea of connecting concepts was something that drove one of my stories. It's about cuckoos. Now, cuckoo obviously is a bird that lays its eggs in another bird's nest, and another bird raises its young. And I thought that this is a story I can place in Africa with all its animals. It has some cuckoos as well. And a little boy and girl are busy pushing his little sister, their friends, through the veldt in Africa, and they see a bird flying across, and the boy says, "But that's a cuckoo." And the girl says, "But they're terrible birds. They're lazy. They don't raise their own young, and they lay their eggs. They're opportunists. She doesn't like them." And he says, "No, but he loves all birds. He can't think of a bird he doesn't like." And then the young child, the baby, for example, she has a need for a nappy change, and the boy says, "Oh, we've got to change this nappy. Will you help me?" And she says, "Oh no, not me. I'm not going to do that. It's not something I can do." And he says to her, "But what are you going to do one day when you have children?" She says, "No, I'll marry a rich man. We'll have a nanny to do things like that. I just can't stand the thought of having to change a nappy." And then the boy says to her, "But why do you dislike cuckoos? If you're not going to look after your own children, then you're a cuckoo." And obviously she doesn't like the thought at all, and goes quiet and thinks a bit, and then says, "You know what, perhaps the cuckoos think and know that it's best that somebody else raises their young. It's better for the baby that someone else raises them, and then she makes the connection. Like me, I'm adopted. And my mother, although she loved me, she was too young to raise me, and for that reason, I was adopted." And then suddenly she sees the bird again, and she says, "You know what? They actually are quite pretty. And the baby needs a dummy," and she turns around and says, "No, let me get that." And so in one story, you have a connection between birds and adoption. And you have this one little girl realizing something profound that affects her, and it changes her attitude. So this is a very small story set in an African setting, using cuckoos to introduce a discussion on adoption and all the feelings that are associated with the feelings of abandonment, of rejection, and obviously the counter's argument that it was perhaps in certain instances better for the child to be raised by someone who was in a position to do so.
Talk about an important issue to talk with our kids about. What a great way to start that conversation. I love it. Is there something that you would want people to know about South Africa that they may not know?
I don't think that my purpose in this book was trying to sell South Africa, but I mean the country sells itself with the diversity of wildlife and of scenery and the diversity of people. The people are really wonderful. So I think it shows through some of the settings of some of the stories, and so, I think in that way you get a glimpse into South Africa, but the themes that are introduced are universal.
Yeah.
And I've been asked for what age group do I write, and I thought perhaps from age 3 onwards. I thought perhaps 7 or 8 years old. But I've come to realize that the topics that are being introduced are so valid for every age group that I don't think there should be an upper end. A child reading these stories for him or herself would probably take on board the nuances that I was hoping to convey, and be able to take those discussions up with their parents. And some of these topics are such that I think the parents could discuss them between themselves. So I don't think there's an upper limit, but if pushed, I would say 3 to 8. But I have recently dealt with a young boy of 10 who just loves the books and can't get enough of the stories. And that the book has put this little boy has started reading himself, and this child has I think is autistic, and I think that it's a wonderful discovery for the parents that a book will entertain and inform this child in a way that they never imagined. It's a new portal of communication for a child. And I was delighted to hear that the book played a role.
Yeah, that is wonderful. Is book 2 coming out anytime soon, or in the works?
Well, I have material available. It's very much up to the publisher. We'll see to it. We'll see what the response is. I've been writing for a while, and I have a lot of material.
Awesome.
I have enough for book 3 too.
Excellent. Well, you have a invitation to return to celebrate those books when they come out. I'm one of those positive mindset guys. When they come out, not if they come out. When they come out.
So until I see you again.
Yes. Tell everybody where they can go to find out more about bedtime stories for clever kids.
The book is published by Austin Macaulay. They have an online platform where you can order it directly. In the United States, it's also available at the big bookstores, Barnes & Noble, even at Target, Google Books, Amazon. So all the big platforms, you will find it in their offerings on children's books, and you can order it directly online.
Wonderful. I've had a wonderful time speaking with the author of Bedtime Stories for Clever Kids, author and illustrator of Bedtime Stories for Clever Kids. Our guest has been Etienne Labuschagne. Pronounce your name correctly, because I get that G I'm having a hard time with.
It's Labuschagne, and now your throat will be cleared.
There you go. Thank you so much for being on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed that.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram, and at JedLeeMagic on X. We have a great YouTube channel, youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And we'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our wonderful guest, Rajani LaRocca. Please be sure to check out Some of Us, A Story of Citizenship in the United States. And I also want to thank Etienne Labuschagne. Please be sure to check out Bedtime for Clever Kids. I want to thank my incredible team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Sheree. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.